start the budget hearing for the fire department. I'm joined by my colleague, Pat Hogan, myself as the chair, Councilor Nave, Councilor Williams, Councilor Penyawa, and we are joined by our chief and his staff here. Welcome. Chief, take it away and just give us an overview, and then we will go in with questions after.
Okay, well, thank you for having me here today. I appreciate the time. This budget, I think every year, this is my 8th time putting a budget together, and it's focused on safety of our firefighters and the people we're sworn to protect. We've had 45 firefighters that have died in the line of duty, so every cent that I get awarded in our budget, I am, with my team, we are fiscally responsible to make sure every bit of that money is spent efficiently, effectively, and for the safety of everybody. Our mission is to protect lives and property, and any hazards, we mitigate it. Every time we're called, when we leave, the situation usually comes to an end, or we hand it off to somebody like National Grid or another outside agency that helps put this to an end. We do this through 10 engine companies starting July, 6 ladder companies. There's 4 members on each fire truck, which is an NFPA standard to have 4 people on a fire truck. Our rescue company has 7 people, and we will have 75 members on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. Regarding our staffing, we'll have 380 budgeted positions, and 368 of those positions will be filled. That will leave us with 12 vacancies because we've already had 12 retirements this year. We have 3 more probable retirements before the end of this calendar year, 23 more probable retirements before the end of next calendar year. But in total, we have another 51 eligible members that can retire from today until the end of calendar year 2026. So because of that, we have in this budget plan to hire a class of new recruits in January of 2026. And with the pending retirements after those 51, we have a bunch of classes that will be on schedule to retire if they so choose. So I would predict probably the fiscal year 27, we're going to need to put on possibly 2 classes, maybe 2 classes of 20 throughout the year. Out of that sworn firefighter staffing line, 90% of those sworn personnel work on the front line. They ride the fire trucks. They respond to all the emergencies that we're dispatched to. Under 10% of our members are in support staff roles. They work in multiple divisions to support the frontline work that everybody does. And oftentimes, you know, the members that are in the room with me now and our staff that works Monday through Friday, they're unsung heroes of our fire department to make sure all the critical things are done to make sure our firefighters have what they need to do their job. 56% of all of our personnel do live in the city, and I have as much demographic information as you want with our department. So if you have any questions, you can ask that when you're ready. As far as hiring, promotions, all those things. I think our 2024, the amount of alarms we responded to emergencies was close to 28,000. The year before, we broke a record with almost 30,000 alarms. It's been the busiest few years we've had in the history of our department. With that, we've had 87 major structure fires. That's a 28% uptick since 2021. 21% of those fires, the major fires, they ended up being multiple alarms, which caused more firefighters to come to the scene, kind of like the fire up at the convent on Court and Grant. And over at Grand Ave, we needed more resources to actually extinguish the fire and keep the fire from burning down neighboring houses and buildings. We go to approximately, per year, 1,000 fires a year. Out of those, like I said, last year we went to 87 structure fires. But this number is a testament to the work that our firefighters do. Out of those 1,000 calls of fire that we responded to, 87 of them turn into major fires. So there's 900 calls a year that nobody ever hears about, but our firefighters, they don't get sent out in a public information release. The media doesn't ask about it. We go on fires all the time, and we do a good job of trying to extinguish those when we get an opportunity. Sometimes they don't get called in properly, and when we get there, we do our best to mitigate that issue. So that's the information I got regarding our calls. We've been really busy with all the development going around the city. We got more buildings to protect. I'll be quiet and let you ask any questions that you have.
Pastor William, I know you got.
You know, Chief, you heard what I asked the police chief. Slightly different numbers, but same picture. Right?
Yes.
What do we do long term about the expenditures for fire?
Yeah.
Not to say we don't need it, right? And that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to say we have a corporation, you know, that we need to maintain its fiscal solvency. And we have these huge expenditures that are going up, not coming down. We need a plan, right?
Yes. So I heard the question you asked Chief Cecil, and, you know, we're both in the public safety business. They have a different mission than we have. Sometimes people get it confused, and they have a different story that led up to today in your question, but I just want to be blunt and upfront. Our histories are different. I don't know if any other department since 1994 has been cut as much as we have. Since 1994, we've lost 88 budgeted positions in our budget. We've lost 6 fire companies that were staffed through the city. We've lost 17 on-duty personnel that were responding to fires. And when you go through and look at the reductions of manpower and staffing that we've had, there wasn't this economic development going on. 94 through the early 2000s. Last year, we've had our busiest permitting season ever. Our Fire Prevention Bureau is, you know, doing permitting and with everybody else, but the amount of economic development that's going on in the city, at the point we're at right now, we can't keep up, right? That's my expert opinion as a fire chief. And when you look at those historic cuts of staffing, they're directly tied to civilian fire fatalities. Back in 2011, when we had a staffing of 75 people on duty, which we're right back to that point right now, there was 1 fire civilian fatality. And I'll just want to give a little bit of background. A city of our size should have 1.11 fire civilian fire fatalities a year. Back in 2009, we had 1 civilian fire fatality. 2010, we had 1. 2011, we had 0. So 2009, we had 1. 2010, we had 1. 2011, we had 0. Right around that time, we ended up losing 2 people on duty. That year, we had 0 again. The very next year after we lost the firefighters on duty, the next year when we lost the firefighter staffing on duty, we had 4 civilian fire fatalities. The next year we lost 4 more people on duty. That was Station 7 closing. We lost 6 civilians in fires. And after that, the staffing reductions, in my opinion, are directly tied to the civilian fire fatalities. And we've been working since I've been the chief. This is my 8th year. We've had so many deficiencies. Not only with staffing have we been reduced in our budget. From 2007 to 2018, there were 14 fire trucks that were not purchased. And we have, with the team I have over at the maintenance division and our budgetary people, we are just now getting on pace to have a reasonable apparatus replacement schedule to protect the city. So I heard your question to Chief Cecil. I asked Matt OJ, what is the assessed value in the city? It's $8.7 billion. Our budget's 0.50% of that 8.7 billion. So at some point, the fire chief, my job is to present to you what I think reasonably, minimally, that we can protect the city. This budget reflects that. On your part, the council's part, the mayor's office and the administration, you know, the prioritization of where these budget lines are most impactful gets put together right now. But what I will say is that $8.7 billion needs to be taxed more. That's my answer. I don't know how we do it, but these services, the last thing I want to do is see you tomorrow and there's a fire at your house or next door, and we can't have anybody respond there.
Right.
So this budget is about the safety of our people we're supposed to protect and our firefighters. And last year we had 60 firefighters that were hurt on duty. So that's just my blunt right to the point,
Yeah.
but that's what it's about.
Can I ask, another data point that you didn't mention that I've had a hard time kind of thinking, right? Like you talk about a situation where we're having more and more challenges given to your guys.
Yes.
Last State of the City, I know the mayor was announcing that you all had been given a designation or an award that you have among the shortest response time of
Yeah,
any department in the country.
Our response times, right? So our response times, it's a domino effect. When Engine 7 and Engine 6 closed, it created Engine Company 1, which is outside of New York City. The last I looked was the busiest engine company in New York State. When they're constantly on the road. When there's an alarm, there's somebody going to show up. What they're able to do when they show up, we need more people to show up at these fires initially to make an effect. If somebody needs to be rescued, to break the door down to get in, to do a size up, to like stretch hand lines. These are labor intensive operations that we have, and just having somebody show up, it's great. It's a great stat to throw out there that we get there under 3 minutes, but what are you going to do when you get there? It's like being the chief. I've been the chief for 8 years, and some people could, hang their hat on the wall and say, hey, I've been the chief for 8 years, but what have you done in those 8 years, right? It's the same thing. You can get on scene in 2 seconds, but if you're not doing nothing, it doesn't mean anything. So this budget's going to reflect being able to put more people on scene to handle complex alarms. We got all these high-rise buildings being built, a lot of remodeling being done downtown. I know you had a department, the committee from the downtown committee here. The occupancy rate downtown is almost at 100%. It's never been like that. And we have to protect that. We have to be able to have enough firefighters to go into those very large buildings and enough firefighters to do all the tasks that are asked of us when we first get there to affect a positive outcome. Do you have any more questions?
No, again, I don't want to go item by item by item, but for me, it really just is that big picture of the long term.
No, and I understand your question, and our team, I will say that we've had a lot of deficiencies we've been trying to make up for over the last 8 years, but the money we get afforded to us, these budgets are fluid. We have priorities that we start the budget year off, and as things come up, we move money around to attack the priorities that we need, and then sometimes we get laws that get put in our lap that we have to, mandate to comply by. But like this year coming up, I think we're going to give back almost $500,000 in our budget. The year before, we were under budget. So we're not just spending money to spend money. If you go through and look at everything we're spending on, it's tools, equipment, it's being able to respond to alarms, it's the cost of doing an operation in our city for the size and the amount of people that we have and the amount of buildings that we have that we have to protect.
Chief, under your operating expenses, do you see you have to obtain new apparatus in the next year? And are you looking at where you might have to do repairs to some of your firehouses if they're aging?
Yes. This budget reflects those needs that we have. Our capital plan, like I mentioned earlier, this particular year, I think we just became even on where we need to be at ground zero of if we buy 2 engines 1 year, 1 ladder truck every other year, if we maintain that for the amount of alarms we have, for how busy our fire trucks are, that's going to be able to keep our apparatus in a good state. When I became the chief, there were some times when we didn't have enough fire trucks for our firefighters to get on because they were in such poor condition. We fixed that. We have repairs that we need to do to the fire trucks that are in the budget. We have, as you know, the cost of everything has gone up, the supply chains are gone up, and our operating line has maintained relatively flat. I think it only increased $190,000. So my goal, based off of being able to give back $600,000 in this budget, was to keep that line flat so we can pay for the personnel that we need to respond to alarms.
Well, Chief, I'm on page 191. And for firefighters, you have 253 last year, and you're projecting to have 261. Is the difference vacancies and the recruitment? And out of that, how many are on grant? Because I know you write grants and you bring on firefighters on grants.
Yeah, so can you repeat your specific questions?
Okay, I said last year to 2024 to 2025 budget year, you
Yes.
had 253 firefighters.
Yes,
And then going to this year and to next year, you have 261.
yes.
So the eight different, is it vacancies or is that aspiration to
No,
to recruit more?
that money was to have more staff in our department.
Okay, so-
To your point, we did get a grant for 20
Okay.
people.
For how many?
For 20 firefighters. This budget only reflects us paying for 12 of those people. That is with the number that you're discussing now, the eight increase of 8 firefighters. The other 8 firefighters that go to that 20 is going back into the coffers that would have come out of the operating budget from the city to pay for our existing staff. So we're paying for the 8 people that are going to be on duty, and the other money that was in that budget is going to right back into the city coffers to pay for the firefighters that were going to have to be paid out of the city budget.
And when are they rolling, that 12 to 20 firefighters that you potentially looking to bring? When are they, when would they roll into the general budget? Is it normally 3
It'll
years
be 2028. And without the grant, the cost of these extra firefighters that were going to be right on duty, answering alarms, responding to fires, it's about $1 million once the grant runs out. So we reallocated a lot of money to actually help support putting these extra people on duty. And it will be $1 million when the grant runs out, approximately. That's if we didn't have the grant paying for it right now. The grant was for $7.5 million over 3 years, and when that's broken down from fringe benefits to salaries, when that runs out, it's going to cost $1 million to keep these firefighters on duty. Which, if you go ask any fire chief or anybody that's familiar with fire safety and the fire service, having an engine company for that amount of money, $1 million, is the greatest bang for your buck you're going to be able to get from a fire company. So I think we've done a good job of taking money where we want to prioritize it to the thing that's going to affect safety the most, and that's what this budget reflects.
Okay, so on page 192, under the salaries, you have proposed for 2026, $33.7 million, right?
Yes.
Is that $7 million you were describing, is it part of that, or is it different?
No, it's broken down into 3 years, and it'll be down in your less line.
Okay,
down in
so
5-1.
3 years, so you're talking about $2 million for 2026.
If you look down on budget line 519900, that's where that money is reflected at for the fire department. There's also another $500,000 that we received in fringe benefits, part of this grant, that doesn't show up in our budget line. I'm not sure if it's in the HR budget. I'm not really sure. It's in special objects. So this grant has given the city back money. Instead of me just putting 20 more people on duty, I was trying to be frugal, put a few people on duty, and give back to the city, so it's a benefit to the city, and at the same time, I'm balancing doing the reasonable amount of firefighters I think we need to move forward in the next couple of years.
And so you give it back to the city, but eventually, along the road, you would need it back, basically.
Eventually, yes.
Yeah.
The money that the
Right.
city's saving right now, from the money I'm giving back, it's kind of, in my opinion, the city's saving money because of the grant we wrote and the award that we got. If there was a way to stash that money away somewhere and put it in an interest-bearing account, it could pay for this for years to come. So that's kind of, not my job to figure that out. But if there was a way to do that, that would be awesome. Because the grant money that we got, the intention was to put people on duty to support our response to help with some of the deaths and injuries that we're facing that are above and beyond the national average for the civilian fire fatalities.
Chief, Councilman Joke had you on page 199, your staffing detail. You're jumping up
What
2
page?
lieutenants, 2 captains. Can
Yes.
you work me through the logic of that?
That's a part of that. There was 8 firefighters a part of the grant, and then they need to have supervision. It's kind of like what Joe Cecil said about the police officers. The firefighters can't ride on the fire trucks without a state certified lieutenant captain. So that grant is paying for 12 positions that I'm utilizing. 8 of those positions are going back into the general fund or the special objects line with the fringe benefit money. So it's almost like another $1 million, I believe, that isn't in our budget. But those extra lieutenants and captains are to supervise these 8 other people.
Can't do one without the other.
Cannot do one without the other.
Chief, go ahead. Chief, on the average, how many new firefighters you get each year, and how many at that time may retire?
So last year we had 27 people retire. I think earlier this presentation, I think we're on pace to have 15 retire this year, possibly 23. We're thinking next year, but we could have 51 people could retire. So on average, it fluctuates, but I would say between 15 and 25 people, depending on what they're
So
saying.
they'll retire, and then how many new firefighters are coming in?
Our goal is to hire every January is to try to hire a class of firefighters so we can coincide with the start of the fiscal year so we can budget for it,
Okay.
have them started, and the money that they're in training for, by the time they get out onto the fire trucks, they could cut overtime that gets paid for vacant spots.
So there's not a limit. So if you get 15, you're going to hire 15?
I would
or
say
no?
that when we get 20 to 25 vacancies, we try to hire. It's hard to put a class on of just 12 because it takes so much of our resources to train a class.
Okay.
We have to transfer people over to training, and then that creates overtime to actually train. So we wait until we get about 20 vacancies, and then we put on a full class. And so we're going to put on a class every time we get around 20 to 25 vacancies. That's how whoever that's to I was listening to the police before. The goal is to always keep those spots filled and hire them, and we try to do that when there's 20 to 25 vacancies. So about 25 people a year we're trying to hire. Right now we have a class of 27 people in our training division right now, and we are hiring 7 lateral transfers. So we have 34 people coming in to make up for our vacancies right now.
Thank you.
And Chief Cecil mentioned, a test, hiring, academy, dropouts, then to the force. What does your flow look like through that
I would
process?
say that if I had enough money to hire 700 firefighters, I could go hire 700 firefighters. If you gave me that money right now, I could do that for you, if you want me to.
Jump from,
But we've
let's
been
look at page
recruiting-
191.
Yeah, we've been
here.
recruiting,
You want to
we've
go
been-
from 253 to 953?
Yeah, but we've been recruiting. I mean, we have a good base of firefighter candidates to hire from. We don't have the same problem as far as the police department does. The civil service test is always going to be a barrier for different reasons, but we always have people on that list to hire from. Trying to get diversity and all that stuff. There's hurdles to that, but we've been exceeding the expectations of diversity in our department, and so we've been doing a good job. We have enough firefighters to hire, and we've been able to keep up with the national averages with demographics.
And is it, police, we talk about academies. Do you have an academy model, or how would you characterize that?
So the way it works is, hopefully next year we're going to give a new entrance exam, probably around April. It goes through the state and through the county civil service. They oversee our civil service. We'll start putting together some marketing, QR codes. We already have a database. I've been recruiting way before I've been the chief. As soon as I got hired back in 2000, I have always been trying to get people hired on the job. We have a database already of people that we send out to make sure they're aware that tests are coming up. And then we go out and we do recruiting. We do have our PSLA program where we haven't really been able to get the fruit of that yet because it was such a young program. But our goal is to recruit, get as many people to take the exam as possible. And then we have some people that are trained in giving the civil service prep classes. We're going to, like we did a class over at Fowler PSLA last year. We had great attendance with that, and the goal is to get everybody to score 100. So the hurdle for candidates is to score high on the exam. If you don't score high on the exam, you don't get a chance to get hired. And then once you get hired, you must meet these strict minimum standards that are set by New York State as far as our training requirements, our academic requirements, the skill level that you have to prove during training to be able to graduate and go onto the line. So we hire as many people we have in the budget every year. Sometimes we have people that don't meet the minimum requirements, but for the most part, we graduate most of the class. So it's a tedious process. I think it's 8 months once the results come in. Once we send a canvas letter to see if anybody's interested. Is it 8 months? Yeah, it's 8 months, but between when we see if anybody's interested until the day they can show up and be in the seat of a training class or on a fire truck, one of the two. So,
While we are on that subject, Chief, do you know what it costs to put on a class?
so right now we have a training staff that is over at our training division all the time, and they're responsible for maintaining training throughout the year. We have a 100-hour program that's through the state. They're responsible for all our tools and equipment, so people are over there all year round, but then we have to supplement them with lieutenants to go over there and help train them. I'll get that number for you. I don't have the exact number. I can tell you what it looks like, and to your ear, I can make it sound. I could tell you what it looks like. I'll get you some numbers on what that costs.
Right. I would like to see that number.
Okay.
The other piece is, and this is somebody with no experience in asking, right? How much of the firefighters' training is similar to the police, or at least the same to go at least further?
I think that human resources aspect, I mean, it's totally different.
It's completely different.
What they do, we don't do. What we do, they won't do. So it's two separate things. There are some administrative things that we kind of have similar requirements by.
I'm talking about physical training when you are putting on firefighters.
So there's state requirements that the police have, the push-ups and all that. Is that what you're asking for?
So say you bring on a class, right? And you are putting them through academy.
Yes.
How much of that academy training, that the physical agility and everything else that the firefighters have to go through is similar to the police or the same with the police?
It's different. We have different tasks that have to be accomplished. So the first thing you have to do, you have to pass this candidate physical agility test, and it's like an obstacle course. It's a nationally, internationally approved test that is gender not specific. Everybody should be able to pass this, and if you can't pass this CPAT test, you can't continue on in the academy. After you pass that, you have to be able to physically, there's two aspects: the academic part, which is in the classroom, a mental participation, and then you have the physical participation. We sit them in the classroom, we go over how you throw a ladder, how you drag a hose to put the fire out, how you force a door. We go over all that stuff in the classroom, and there's test questions, there's curriculum that is mandated by the state that the firefighters have to score certain scores on their written test and verbal test, and then from there, they have to go over, and they are skill sheets that they have to perform on those skill sheets. And so it's one of the most physically demanding jobs there are, that when you're training, it's one thing, but we teach them how to do all that, and we give them, physical training throughout the academy. We take them running, we go up to the dome, we assist with their physical, what they need to have physical-wise on the job. But make no doubt about it, when you score 100 on that test, or you score 95 and you think you are going to get hired, you should already be in shape. When I got the letter that I was going to get hired, I was up at the dome outside running the stairs every day so I could come in.
And the reason I asked that, Chief, for the cause-effective purposes, and I don't know if you put on different classes in opposite year than the police does. Because if we talk about physical agility, right?
Yes.
Running,
Yes.
push-up, pull-ups and all of that.
Yes.
Pull-up is pull-up, right?
Yes.
Running is running.
Yep.
Right? And I'm wondering, from that perspective, is there collaboration that can be developed to maybe minimize costs in some shape or form?
There are standards that are above and beyond what we could recommend things, but their mission and how they accomplish their mission physically is different than what we have to do. There's certainly some exercises that we could probably do together that everybody needs to be able to push up, pull up, sit ups, and things like that. But the physical curriculum that our firefighters have to participate in prepare them for the skills that they have to perform when they're out of training. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
It's
But
two
I'm
separate
just
things.
suggesting maybe something you look into if there may be room for
Okay, I'll talk to
for
Chief
working
Cecil
together,
and see if there are,
right?
but we
In
kind
term
of
costs.
mostly don't put on the same timing of our classes because we put on 25, they're putting on 17, so they're gonna put on classes more regularly than we are, and they might have more retirements, or we might, so having that all mixed together might be problematic, but I will definitely look into that for your question.
And then Chief Cecil earlier told us that there are certain numbers per a supervisor, right? For
Yes.
example, a captain. I see that you have two. I mean, you have less than the police, for example. You have projecting to 2025 to 2026. You are about, what is it, Council William? About 150 firefighters less than the police. But
Yes.
but is there a mandated state?
Yep, so every fire
requirement
truck, there needs to
for-
be 4 people on the truck.
Okay,
Every
okay.
truck needs to have
Four per truck.
a supervisor, yes. So there's typically 3 firefighters and either a lieutenant and a captain on that truck. The stations have 4 shifts. There's 3 lieutenants on 3 of the shifts. There's a captain that oversees the station. And they're trained specifically to be first line supervisors to supervise those firefighters.
Just Chief, you were mentioning shifts and staffing. Chief Cecil had talked about being innovative in terms of their scheduling to try to find efficiencies. How many days a week do you guys work?
They work 2 24-hour shifts a week. They work 48 hours over an 8-day period.
48 over.
48 hours over an 8-day
8-day
work
period.
period, yes.
Okay. 2/24s, that is?
Yes.
Okay. Are we creative and save any money? Or is
Like I said, we've been trying to, we have collective bargaining agreement mandates that we have to live by and negotiations of what the firefighters are going to be willing to vote on and to agree to do. But we've always been looking at how we can provide the service we need and have a budget that reflects the least amount of money that it requires to do that with. Okay.
And earlier, Chief Cecil had alluded to the change of scheduling, right? And how that from last year or was it this year, that somehow that change of schedule only cost them about change of schedule save them some money, right? But from, I think it was like 700,000 to like 200,000,
Yes.
right? I guess what I'm asking is, from the change of the schedule from your department, have you quantified the saving in that? Because I remember, when we had this conversation a while back, that the intention was not only is it going to improve efficiency in staffing, but it was going to also bring other benefits and other.
I would say that the same 48-hour schedule we were working on before, we were still working 48 hours, but it was over 4 days instead of 2. So you were still working 48 hours over 8 days. The benefits were health benefits that we were referring to back when we discussed that. And when the budget was approved and the schedule was approved, that money, whatever the delta would be to pay for that schedule, was included in the benefits that were agreed upon. But I will say, when we put this budget together, we allocate money for the amount of money we think it's going to cost per the salary line. The only item that I can't predict are injuries and sick time. And so those are going to be the only things that fluctuate. If I eliminated those out of my budget, just like the cops talked about earlier, I can actually have the budget today and pass it at the end of the fiscal year, and it'll be static the whole year.
So I guess let me rephrase it another way. Beside the health benefit to the firefighters, is there any other benefit that you can, from your analysis, that you can show in terms of the scheduling changes at all?
I would say, as far as to your question, I don't have the answer right now. I would say that most fire departments in the United States do a 24-hour schedule of some sort, similar to what we moved from. What we moved to, the schedule we were at, I believe it was only 15% of fire departments in the country did our schedule. I would have to get back to you on those numbers, but I think it's over 80% do a 24-hour schedule. And the move was more of the request from the union. You know, there was negotiations that went on. That was one of the negotiation topics that they wanted. That was a high priority, and that's where that came into play. It wasn't like a fiscal decision on top of from my administration or the mayor's administration to say this schedule is going to save a boatload of money. It was a request by the union, and the give and takes of negotiations. That's the give that they were given, and at some point there was the negotiation and whatever the city recouped back on the backside of that. But the union asked for that schedule, and it was given in a negotiated situation.
And I'm going to ask this question because I had alluded to Chief Cecil earlier. Do you have any overtime strategies and goals, or at least approaches from your leadership of managing overtime?
Yeah. Our goal is the more firefighters that we have to fill overtime spots, we have less overtime when there's vacancies. So the goal is to always keep our budgeted number the highest amount as possible, because that will lead to less overtime. And then, you know, from the day that I became the chief, every dollar that's spent on overtime, it's going to tasks that are needed to run the department. Like I said, the only line item that I can't keep in check because it's an unknown are when firefighters get hurt, whether on or off duty, or they're sick on or off duty. You can't predict that, and we try to accommodate for some of those sicknesses, but sometimes, you know, people are out for very extended long periods of time, and that creates a lot of overtime. The sick time and injury time is the only parts of the overtime line that I can't predict and balance right here today. As the year goes through, the priority is things that become less of a priority that we can, as I said, the budget lines can be fluid. If we can take money from things that we had a priority right now and put into that line to pay for it, at the end, when we're done paying for everything at June 30th, 2026, the goal is for the total budget to be able to be under, like I am this year, to give back $600,000 or so back to the city, because even though the overtime line is up, we figured out a priority that we can help pay for that or give money back to the city in whatever capacity or budget line that requires at the time. So the goal is to never overspend our total budget. And based off the overtime, it's based off of the situations that arise, whether they're fires, whether they're seats that we have to be filled because people are off for certain reasons, and the tasks that have to get done by support staff.
Other questions? You good? Well, Chief, I want to thank you. I think, you know, just from all of us as residents observing the work that you are putting in with your team it's commendable. And, you know, the city is getting older, housing is getting older, more fires, you know, and you are managing it with the team.
Well, thank you.
So from all of us, we appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you. It's not me, it's the team that we have, our command staff, our support staff that works with our command staff and all the firefighters. They do a great job when the bell rings. And I will say that I see a lot of the counselors at the fires, especially some of the larger fires, and I appreciate the support. Like I said, there were tons of deficiencies that I had when I started as a chief. Some of you haven't been on the council as long as I've been in the chief's office, but we have identified and fixed a lot of problems, but there's always room for improvement, and there's always things that we're looking at, making sure that we keep people safe. And as you can see, the work that they do on scene, it's a labor-intensive job that needs a lot of resources, and I thank you for your support.
We saw what you did the night of Convent Fire. You had a busy night. You had to call those extra alarms. And days like that, you just got to push out the window. Supposed overtime means nothing for the sacrifices that you have. And I saw one fireman, was not feeling well. So it's very hard work. Not many people can do what you and all the firefighters in the city do.
Well, so thank you again for your support from the council. I
welcome.
appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, if nothing else, that will conclude our budget hearing for today. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.